My name is Ahmad. For 60 years, I wore the badge of a leader, respected, feared, bound by the chains of dogma in this wary corner of Gaza. My identity was steeped in the shadows of rigid obedience, a prisoner of a faith that demanded silence over doubt. Yet deep within me, darkness began to stir. Dreams haunted my nights, taunting me with visions I could not comprehend. I was sinking into a crisis that threatened everything I thought I knew. It happened one fateful day, a collision with fate that spiraled into a near-death experience, leaving me enveloped in suffocating darkness. I was suspended at the edge of truth when suddenly a light broke through the void. Jesus, the one I had never dared to acknowledge, called my name. In that moment, my tightly held beliefs shattered, and I saw the universal truths hidden beneath the layers of indoctrination. My life was transformed in an instant, and the revelation was staggeringly clear. I was being beckoned to freedom. But freedom comes at a price. Returning from that surreal encounter, I found myself marked as a traitor. My family, once my sanctuary, turned against me. The whispers of betrayal echoed in my ears as I grappled with guilt and emerging faith. I delved into the pages of a book that ignited a fire of curiosity and hope I had suppressed for far too long. The scriptures spoke of love, grace, and redemption, a stark contrast to the chains that bound me. Now, I stand at a crossroads, compelled to share this awakening with the world, despite the peril it brings. I've come to understand that this is a spiritual war, one that transcends the borders of belief and identity. With each breath, I feel the urgency to reveal this truth, to illuminate the darkness that ensnares so many souls, just as I once was. So, join me on this journey. What I'm about to unveil is not just a tale of personal struggle, it's a rallying cry, a call to awaken your spirit. Before we dive deeper, I urge you to share where you are watching from and the time in your location below. Your voice matters in this unfolding narrative. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond, for the revelations to come may just change everything for you, as they did for me. Together, let's explore the profound depths of faith, resilience, and the light that calls us all to rise. In the heart of Gaza, life unfolds under an unyielding regime of religious obedience. Each day, I walk the narrow, crowded streets where the weight of tradition hangs heavily in the air, stifling individuality and imposing a profound silence over any doubts that dare surface. I've spent 60 years entrenched in this world, a member of a community that teaches conformity and watches relentlessly for signs of rebellion. The tension is palpable. Every whispered conversation, every sideways glance carries the weight of potential betrayal. Betrayal of faith, of community, of family. As a leader in this community, I wore my beliefs as armor, never once questioning the narrative woven around us. Despite my outward fidelity, a quiet turmoil brewed inside me. I had always been taught that doubt was a sin. Yet as I listened to the same sermons echo week after week, I felt a stirring, a restlessness that couldn't be ignored. It was during one of these contemplative moments that everything changed. I had been caught in the crossfire of political strife, a situation that had put my life in danger. After a close brush with death during an airstrike, it felt as if the very fabric of reality had been torn asunder, ushering in a moment I would later come to recognize as my near-death experience. In that moment of impending death, a vivid vision enveloped me. I was transported away from the chaos and strife of Gaza, surrounded by a celestial light. And there he stood, Jesus, Isa. The encounter was surreal yet profoundly real. His presence radiated love and understanding, washing over me like a comforting balm. In his eyes I felt seen, not as leader or a man defined by duty, but as a soul exploring the depths of existence. It was in that instant that the truth began to unfold before me, a revelation that shattered all preconceived notions I had held onto my entire life. Jesus spoke of a spiritual war that transcended borders and religious affiliations, a war that had been fought for generations, hidden behind layers of deception. He unveiled to me the manipulations of the elite that perpetuated conflict and division among us. I saw visions of power-hungry leaders wielding ideology as a weapon to control and instill fear. I understood that I had been a pawn in a greater game, where the suffering of innocent lives was merely collateral damage in pursuit of power. My heart raced as the implications of this revelation settled in. It was no longer about surviving each day in Gaza. It was about awakening to the truth of our shared humanity. As I returned to consciousness, the weight of my experience lingered heavily on my heart and mind. I found myself grappling with the implications of this awakening. How could I return to my life as if nothing had changed when in fact everything had? My faith had been shaken to its core. I could no longer ignore the hidden agenda that sought to divide us further. I became acutely aware of the urgency to share this truth, to awaken others trapped in their own illusions. My heart swelled with a newfound purpose, the call to evangelize the message of Jesus, to spread the understanding that had been so freely given to me. But as I began to deliberate how to voice these revelations, fear clawed at my insides. The oppressive weight of tradition and the potential backlash from my community felt suffocating. I had devoted my life to a path that now seemed laden with deception. I wrestled with the idea of being branded a heretic, of losing everything I had known and loved. Yet the thought of remaining silent, of allowing others to suffer under the same delusions, ignited a fire within me that would not be extinguished. I felt called to take a stand, no matter the personal cost. I understood, through the lens of my encounter with Jesus, that confronting this hidden deception was not just a personal battle. It was part of a larger spiritual war calling for action. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but the journey towards truth was one I was ready to take, armed with the revelations that had reshaped my very existence. I've lived my whole life in the shadows of expectations, a respected figure in my community, an important voice in HAMAS. At 60 years old, my presence commands attention, yet beneath my austere exterior lies a growing dissatisfaction that has haunted me for quite some time. My days are filled with prayers and meetings, reinforcing the very doctrines I have spent my life upholding. But the truth lingers, a whisper in the quiet moments that gnaws at my soul, revealing a chasm between religious obedience and the spiritual fulfillment I yearn for. The routines, the rituals, once comforting, now feel constricting, and I find myself grappling with an emptiness I can't ignore. The world around me is a tapestry woven with fear and resentment. The community expects me to lead with unwavering conviction, to instill a sense of purpose among those who look to me. Each day, I wear the mask of unwavering faith, but internally, a fierce storm brews. I've seen firsthand the deception that plagues our society, the manipulation by the elite that keeps the masses in chains. Each time I look into the eyes of those around me, I sense their struggle, a deep-seated yearning for truth, cloaked under layers of fear. I feel their pain, and in those fleeting moments, I recognize my own discontent reflected back at me. Then came a moment that shifted the course of my life. One fateful day, during a particularly tumultuous period of conflict, I found myself caught in an attack that left me near death. My world dissolved into darkness, and as the life slipped from my body, I was transported to a realm that felt transcendent. In that suspended moment, I experienced what can only be described as a near-death experience. As if the fabric of reality had unraveled, I encountered Jesus, who stood before me, radiant and powerful. His presence emanated a warmth I'd never felt before, an all-encompassing love that resonated deep within me, illuminating the darkest corners of my soul. In that divine encounter, revelations flooded my mind. Jesus spoke to me of the spiritual war that transcends this earthly existence, a battle not against flesh and blood, but against the forces of deception that bind humanity in fear and ignorance. He unveiled a hidden agenda orchestrated by the elite, revealing how they exploit religion, manipulate truths, and instigate division among us. I could see it clearly through his eyes, the wars, the suffering, the overarching narrative that painted us as enemies when we were, in reality, brothers and sisters, seeking connection. The truths I had sought all my life were presented to me unfiltered, each revelation striking harder than the last, demanding an awakening that I could no longer resist. As I returned to consciousness, the weight of what I had seen pressed heavily upon me. I was no longer merely a leader. I was now a witness. My understanding of faith was irrevocably altered. The darkness of deception that shrouded my world began to lift, and I felt an urgency coursing through my veins. It wasn't enough to simply accept these truths for myself. I had to share them. The realization struck me with a clarity I couldn't shake. Remaining silent while others suffered in ignorance would betray everything I now understood. But even as this resolve took root within me, fear flooded back in, like a tide threatening to overwhelm me. The consequences of speaking out gnawed at the edges of my mind. How would my community react? Would they see me as a traitor? The tension coiled tightly within me. I felt the weight of history bearing down on my shoulders, urging me to question the very foundations of my faith and identity. In those moments of turmoil, I could feel the pulse of hope rising within. I knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I couldn't ignore the call to engage in this spiritual war. The truths I had discovered were meant to be shared, to spark the fires of awakening in others. Each person I would share my story with could potentially be freed from the chains of deception that bound them. And so, with a heart full of trepidation yet unwavering conviction, I prepared to step into a new life, one defined by truth, anchored in the revelations I had received, and driven by a desire to ignite the same awakening I had experienced. The journey would not be easy, but it was a journey I was willing to undertake, for the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. As I kneel for my daily prayers, a familiar unease begins to creep into my heart. The words I once recited with fervor now feel hollow, echoing back to me like a distant memory, devoid of the meaning they carried for so long. It's a troubling disconnection, one I've tried to ignore. As I move through the motions, I find myself questioning the validity of my beliefs in silence, grappling with the notion that perhaps the faith I've devoted my life to may not be the truth I've sought. Each prayer feels like a performance, and behind closed doors, an unsettling realization takes root. Could religion truly be a controlling mechanism in my life? The dreams come at night, creeping in like shadows in a lonely room. They're not just dreams, they're vivid and unnerving visions. I see myself navigating through what appears to be a battlefield, surrounded by chaos and suffering. Figures loom around me, both familiar and foreign, their faces twisted in pain and despair. I can't shake the feeling that these dreams are messages, warnings that something is amiss. Each night, I wake, up drenched in sweat, heart racing, filled with a sense of foreboding. It feels as if I'm being urged to look deeper, to question what lies beneath the surface of my faith. I increasingly suspect that the narratives I've always accepted might be cloaked in deception, serving a hidden agenda orchestrated by those in power. As days turn into weeks, I find myself questioning everything. I begin to scour the texts, searching for clarity, hoping to uncover the truth that's eluded me. I'm met with conflicting interpretations, and the ambiguity deepens my sense of disconnection. The teachings I once held dear become tainted with doubt, and I can't ignore the chilling possibilities that nag at the edges of my mind. Is my faith a tool of manipulation? Is the fear of dissent simply a means to control the masses? The thought is not just unsettling, it's disheartening. The weight of these unanswered questions becomes almost unbearable, leaving me with a gnawing sense of isolation and urgency. Then, on what seemed like an ordinary night, my world shifts drastically during an unexpected encounter. It happens when I drift into a state between sleep and wakefulness. I find myself enveloped in a radiant light that seems to consume the darkness. Suddenly, there he is, Jesus, standing before me with an aura of compassion and understanding unlike anything I've ever felt. His presence radiates warmth, penetrating every corner of my soul, illuminating the doubts that have haunted me. For the first time, I feel safe enough to let go of my fear and listen. In that sacred moment, revelation floods my mind, revealing truths about our existence that strip away the needless complexities. Jesus begins to speak to me about the spiritual war that rages not just around, but within us, all of us. He reveals how deception serves as a weapon in the hands of the elite who manipulate faith for their own gain. I see visions of the world's conflicts, the wars fought in his name, not to spread love, but to sow division and chaos. I witness leaders, cloaked in righteousness, wielding power over the very souls they're meant to uplift. With each revelation, I feel my old beliefs melting away, replaced by a courageous understanding of what's true. I realize my role is not just as a leader, but as a harbinger of truth, called to awaken others who are still trapped in the lie. As the light begins to fade and my consciousness shifts back to the reality I've known, I'm left with a profound urgency. I've been entrusted with a mission, and yet fear grips my heart as I consider what lies ahead. How do I convey the message I've received to those steeped in tradition and fear? Can I risk everything, my family, my community, for a truth that could shatter the very foundations of their beliefs? The stakes have never felt higher, and the echoes of Jesus' words resonate deeply within me. I know I must confront this spiritual war head-on, but as I look back into the life I would leave behind, I wonder if the battle for hearts and minds has only just begun. The day of the accident began like any other. I was on my way to a community meeting, the weight of my responsibilities as a leader heavy on my shoulders. As I navigated the familiar streets of Gaza, a sense of unease settled in my gut, a feeling that something was about to change. I can still recall the chaotic sounds of the city, the bustle of people going about their day, and then, suddenly, everything went black. An instant later, I found myself enveloped in darkness. When I regained awareness, I was no longer in my body. I was suspended in a void, a silent abyss that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. It was frightening at first, but then I felt an inviting warmth that began to pull me toward a blinding light. As I moved closer, I became aware of a presence within that light. It was Jesus, his radiance illuminating my soul with a purity that transcended any understanding I had ever possessed. He called my name with a familiarity that felt both personal and infinite. In that moment, nothing else mattered. My fears, my doubts, my identity, all of it faded into the background as I stood before him. As the light enveloped me, I was filled with a sense of peace I had never experienced before. Jesus looked at me with compassion and understanding, and in that gaze, I felt the weight of my life's burdens begin to lift. He spoke to me, revealing truths that I had long buried beneath layers of dogma and expectation. In that sacred space, it became clear that my understanding of faith had been limited by the very systems I had upheld. Jesus illuminated the hidden agenda that manipulates belief and divides communities, drawing back the curtain on the deception that serves the elite. It was as if the universe itself was unfolding before me, revealing the interconnectedness of our struggles. With each revelation, I saw the ways in which religious systems could ensnare souls, leading them away from true spiritual awakening. I witnessed the suffering of those trapped by fear and indoctrination, their lives dictated by ideologies that promised salvation but fostered division. Jesus showed me how these systems exploited humanity's longing for connection, turning it into a tool for control. The urgency of this message struck me deeply. I realized I had been a part of this cycle, perpetuating beliefs that only served to deepen the chasm between us as fellow human beings. I felt the call to break free from this bondage, not just for myself, but for those who were still lost in the darkness. As I began to awaken from that experience, I could feel the light's warmth fading, but the truths I had seen lingered in my heart. I returned to my body, gasping for breath, the weight of my existence coming back to me. The world flooded in once more, with all its chaos and confusion, and yet I felt fundamentally changed. I knew I could no longer adhere to the blind obedience that had shaped my life for so long. The spiritual war I had been oblivious to was real, and I had been called to join the fight for truth against the deception that enshrouded our lives. In the weeks that followed, I was haunted by the experience, driven by the need to share what I had witnessed. But fears of rejection loomed large. How could I articulate these revelations? What if my community turned against me? Every day felt like a new battle as I struggled to reconcile the profound changes within me with the expectations of those around me. The questions swirled in my mind. Could I inspire an awakening? Or would I only bring about my own downfall? I felt a sense of urgency build within me, propelling me toward action. As I grappled with these fears, the message I carried was clear: to awaken those still caught in the traps of deception and to instill hope amid the shadows. The path ahead remained uncertain, but I was resolved to embrace the mission laid before me, ready to face whatever challenges awaited on this journey for truth. After my return to life, the world that greeted me felt strangely foreign. I was alive, yet the weight of my experience lingered heavily on my soul. The visions of Jesus, the revelations he imparted, they were etched into my consciousness, impossible to erase. But with this awakening came an avalanche of rejection. I had not anticipated the ferocity of the backlash from my family and former associates. In their eyes, I had become a traitor, a man who dared to question the very fabric of our beliefs. Their scorn pierced me deeper than any physical wound ever could. The very people I had devoted my life to protecting now saw me as an enemy. The accusations stung. They would tell me I had been seduced by a false narrative, that my encounter was nothing more than a fabrication born from weakness. I could see the disappointment in their eyes, a mixture of fear and anger directed at what I represented. The reality that had once offered so much. Comfort had shifted, leaving me adrift in a sea of confusion. I found myself wrestling with guilt, questioning whether this new path I was pursuing was worth the pain it inflicted on those I loved. The emotional turmoil became almost unbearable, a constant battle between loyalty to my family and my newfound understanding of the truth. In the darkness of my despair, I began to delve deeper into the teachings of Jesus, searching for solace. Each verse I read took on new life, resonating with the truths I had been shown. The urgency within those words spoke to me, urging me to confront the spiritual war that surrounded us all. It was almost as if Jesus was guiding me through the tangled web of deception, revealing how the elite manipulated faith and exploited our fears for their agendas. The understanding that had been hidden from me for so long felt liberating, yet it reinforced my sense of isolation. I couldn't share these insights without facing the wrath of those I once called brothers. My mind spiraled into an internal crisis, as I pondered what all of this meant. Could Jesus truly be the key to our liberation, as I had felt during my near-death experience? In my heart, I knew it was true, yet the fear of rejection from my community loomed large. The conflict consumed me. How could I accept these revelations while watching the people I cared about suffer in ignorance? Each night, the guilt would wash over me like a tidal wave. I would lie awake, wrestling with the weight of my choices and the impact they had on my family. The emotional isolation grew steadily, fueled by the belief that I was alone in my newfound understanding. As I moved through the days that followed, I felt an undeniable pull to seek connection with others who might resonate with my journey. I began to reach out, hesitant yet hopeful, to those who shared similar experiences. Finding even a small community willing to explore the truths I had discovered became a lifeline amidst the chaos. Each conversation was fraught with tension, but gradually, I felt a flicker of warmth that reminded me I wasn't entirely alone. I was partaking in something greater than myself, a movement that sought to awaken others from the chains of deception, encouraging them to break free from the confines of dogma. Yet every moment of hope was shadowed by the fear of losing everything I had known. The thought of my family, my loved ones, never understanding the shift in my beliefs, filled me with profound sadness. The fear of their eternal condemnation haunted my thoughts. I grappled with the uncertainty of what would become of my relationships as I ventured deeper into the truths that had been revealed to me. Each step toward awakening felt like walking a tightrope, a delicate balance between embracing my new reality and clinging desperately to my past. I knew I couldn't turn back. The urge to share the truth that ignited my soul resolutely overshadowed the fear of isolation, propelling me forward into the uncertainty that lay ahead. In the quiet shadows of my home, I began to seek the truth that had eluded me for so long. After my life-altering experience, the world I once knew felt increasingly distant. I felt an insatiable curiosity that bubbled up, pushing me to explore beyond the teachings I had accepted without question for decades. I turned to the Bible, its pages filled with stories of hope and redemption that stirred something deep within me. Each verse I read felt alive, illuminating the path ahead and offering glimpses of a reality far richer than I had been led to believe. In the past, these texts had seemed foreign and incomprehensible, but now they resonated with a clarity that was shocking. As I dove deeper into this exploration, I found myself drawn to videos of testimonies from others who had walked similar paths. Their experiences echoed my own, a journey from darkness into light that spoke of an awakening filled with profound revelations. Each shared story filled me with a sense of belonging, a reminder that I was not alone in my struggles. I could hear their voices conveying hope, love, and the relentless pursuit of truth, and I longed to experience that transformation myself. But while their stories sparked a flame within me, they also kindled an unquenchable fear. I worried that pursuing this truth might cost me everything: my identity, my family, and the community I had been part of for so many years. It was during a discreet gathering with a small group of Christians that I felt a flicker of peace. These were individuals who understood my journey, who spoke candidly about their own awakenings and the struggles that accompanied them. Sharing our experiences, we forged connections built on vulnerability and compassion. It was as if we could see through the veils of deception that had clouded our understanding for so long. In their presence, I felt an acceptance that was foreign yet welcoming, a deep sense of camaraderie that reminded me that the spiritual war was not just my battle, but one we shared collectively. Yet lingering in the back of my mind was always the heavy weight of my past. I was torn between two worlds, and each moment spent in this nurturing environment was fraught with anxiety about the ramifications of my choices. What would my family think if they knew? Would I be ostracized for daring to step away from the long-held beliefs that had defined my existence? These thoughts haunted me, wrapping around my heart like a vice. I often found myself awake at night, wrestling with the reality of my decision to explore these new beliefs, while fearing the isolation that could follow. The urge to continue seeking the truth was immense. However, the potential loss of everything I knew felt insurmountable. As I pushed forward in this newfound community, a sense of urgency began to build within me. The revelations I had gleaned from the teachings of Jesus were far too important to keep hidden. With each encounter, my resolve grew stronger, and I felt the weight of responsibility upon my shoulders. I knew I had to take action, to speak out against the hidden agendas that sought to manipulate belief and suppress the truth. I became determined to reach others who were trapped in the chains of deception, yearning for a spiritual awakening similar to my own. And so, despite the ever-present fear of alienation from my family, I prepared to confront the spiritual war, ready to illuminate the path toward truth, even if my actions risked pushing me further away from those I loved most. In the wake of my encounter with Jesus, a profound sense of purpose began to blossom within me. The realization that my experience was more than just a fleeting moment of enlightenment weighed heavily on my heart. It felt as if I had been summoned, called to action in the midst of a spiritual war that raged around us. I understood that I couldn't simply return to my old life and pretend nothing had happened. The truth I had discovered demanded to be shared. I became acutely aware of the urgency to warn others about the ongoing deception woven into the fabric of our society, deceptions that often manifested as hidden agendas by the elite. I felt a fire within me, igniting a passion to speak out against the false narratives that kept so many imprisoned in ignorance. Those who looked to me for guidance needed to understand that what I had seen was not just my isolated experience. It was a clarion call for awakening. I saw families, friends, and communities shackled by fear and division, caught in the crossfire of manipulative ideologies that did nothing but sow chaos. This was a battle for the soul, and I felt it was my divine responsibility to take a stand. Each day of silence felt like a betrayal to all those still seeking the truth. As I began to formulate my thoughts into words, a deep-seated fear threatened to silence me. I was all too aware of the risk involved in breaking my silence. I knew the potential backlash from my community could cost me dearly. They had been my brothers and sisters, my family. What would they think? Would they view my revelations as heresy? The fear of rejection gnawed at me, leaving an undercurrent of anxiety that accompanied every thought of speaking out. But as I considered the stakes at play, the suffering, the manipulation, I realized that remaining silent was no longer an option. The call I felt was too strong to ignore. In quiet moments, I reflected on my encounter with Jesus, recalling his words and the divine message of love that permeated the light I experienced. He had shown me that there was so much more to life than what we had been taught to believe, that our spirituality was not meant to divide us, but to unite us in our shared humanity. These thoughts fueled my conviction, reminding me that awakening others was not just about imparting knowledge, it was about offering hope. I envisioned how an awakening could ripple through the lives of those still trapped in the darkness, how it could heal fractures within relationships and communities. With each passing day, the resolve to pursue this calling solidified within me. I felt the weight of responsibility shift, molding me into a beacon, an instrument for change in the great spiritual war unfolding around us. I started reaching out to others, seeking those who had also felt the stirrings of truth in their hearts. The first few connections I made were tentative, but with each conversation, the vision of a growing movement began to crystallize in my mind. I could see a community rising up, united by a shared desire to confront the deception and spread the truth that had awakened me. As fear made way for hope, I prepared for the journey ahead, ready to face the challenges, but driven by the unwavering need to fulfill this divine mission. The decision to leave my home was not made lightly. It felt like I was stepping into the unknown, away from everything I had ever known. Yet it was a necessary act of courage. My former name, once a badge of honor in my community, became a symbol of everything I was distancing myself from. It represented the layers of tradition that had dictated my life for 6 decades. As I renounced that name, I felt as if I was shedding a skin that no longer served me, embracing the painful yet liberating reality of my newfound identity. With each step away from my old life, a sense of power surged within me. The wilderness that lay before me was both daunting and invigorating. Nature became my companion, and in its vastness, I found solace. Amidst the struggles and suffering, I began to explore my spiritual freedom. The world around me shifted, the whispers of doubt transformed into an urgent call to evangelize, to share the truth that had been revealed to me by Jesus. My heart burned with the desire to plant seeds of hope and awaken others to the spiritual war unfolding not just inside of us, but in the society we lived in. As I moved forward, I felt an awakening, a deep awareness of the deceptions that had held sway over so many lives. I encountered individuals who were trapped in their beliefs, some paralyzed by fear, oblivious to the reality of their circumstances. My encounters were filled with tension as I sought to communicate the urgency of what I had experienced. I'd recount the revelation of Jesus, how he illuminated the hidden agenda of the elite who perpetuate division and suffering under the guise of righteousness. My voice trembled with the weight of my testimony, ignited by the need to awaken others before they too fell victim to deception. The journey was not without struggle. I faced internal battles that mirrored the external struggles of the world around me. Every story I shared opened myself up to the possibility of rejection, yet I pressed on. There were nights when doubt seeped into my heart, whispering that perhaps this path was misguided. Yet, in those moments of despair, I would recall the light of Jesus and the messages of love and truth that resounded in my soul. It was these memories that fueled my determination, propelling me to confront the fears that lingered and to embrace the pain of my journey for the greater purpose of awakening. Years passed since I embarked on this transformative journey, and in the process, I came to find safety within a small Christian community. Here, I discovered a warmth and acceptance that shook me to my core. Sharing. My testimony became a form of healing, impacting lives in ways I could never have imagined. Still, a part of me clung to hope for my family, wishing they would one day understand my new identity. The yearning for reconciliation lingered, intertwined with my mission. I held firm to the belief that even amidst the pain of separation, truth had the power to bridge the chasm created by misunderstanding. My journey continued, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of the adversities of a true awakening. As I reflect on my tumultuous journey, I realize that each step I've taken has drawn me closer to an undeniable truth, a truth that reverberates beyond the confines of faith, culture, and geography. This awakening was not merely for me. It is a beacon calling out to each of you, urging you to confront the shadows that loom in your own lives. Have you felt that rustling within your spirit, that nagging whisper urging you to seek beyond what you have known? 2. Question the structures that bind you. If you have, know that you are not alone. We are all interconnected in this spiritual war, fighting against the forces that seek to divide and manipulate us. In sharing my story, I seek not only to illuminate my path, but to ignite your own quest for understanding and truth. As I rise from the ashes of my past, transformed yet terrified, I feel the urgency to awaken the dormant spirits around me. Ask yourself, What chains are keeping you from your true self? What hidden agendas have you unconsciously upheld? Your voice matters and deserves to be heard. Please, I urge you to take a moment to share your thoughts, your fears, your experiences in the comments. Together, we can glean wisdom from our collective encounters, forging connections that remind us we are part of something much larger. If my testimony has resonated with you, if you feel a flicker of recognition in your heart, I encourage you to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and hit that notification bell. Each revelation shared here has the power to change lives, not just for you, but for countless other seekers yearning for clarity and connection. Our journey has just begun, and what lies ahead will unveil even deeper truths, guiding us toward liberation and understanding. In the upcoming video, we will delve into the story of another awakened soul who encountered the profound love of Jesus in their darkest hour. It is a tale of transformation that is sure to inspire and provoke thought, a reminder that the light always follows the darkest nights. I'm Ahmad, and I thank you for accompanying me on this shared journey of awakening and discovery. Remember, as we navigate this spiritual battlefield together, the truth always has a way of illuminating the shadows. Stay tuned, and let's continue to seek together.